Okay, we're on.
Welcome everyone to the second in our series of How to Learn Gemara, presented by two of our great sages. The first one, Reb Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and the second sefer by Reb Yitzhak Konfenton. Now, Reb Yitzhak Konfenton is a Rishon. He's the rabbi who taught the rabbi of Reb Yosef Karo, the author of Shulchan Aruch. He lived in Spain from 1360 to 1463, so you can see he was at the end of the great golden age of Spanish Jewry. Right after this, 1492, Isabella signs her, Yimach Shema signs her decree to start the Inquisition. Things were already starting to get a little difficult for the Jews, but it hadn't reached its peak. He is called the Gaon of Castile, and it was taken very seriously at that time, the word Gaon. He lived to be a very old man, and he was very influential in Spanish Jewry at that time, a Rishon. The only sefer that we have left is this little sefer called Darkei Gemara. It originally was called Darkei Talmud, but the Goyim tried to destroy the Talmud both physically and by name. Later on, there were censors, and they said you couldn't use the word Talmud, and they had to change the word to Gemara. Whatever it is, Baruch Hashem, this little book survived. It was a favorite book of, from what I understand, from the Chazon Ish. And as far as our little class is concerned, it's a wonderful complement to the Derek Tefillah that we just did. What I would like to do, Bezrat Hashem, is after we finish this sefer, then to do the other two svarim of the Ramchal, Bezrat Hashem, and that'll give us the real complete picture, all the tools that one really needs to do a very careful analysis of the Gemara, Bezrat Hashem. The uniqueness of the sefer is that, unlike the Ramchal, who has shown us all the tools, the Darkei Gemara is also going to tell us about attitude. How do you approach the learning itself? How do you do the learning itself? Of course, we'll also be talking about all those technical things that we just learned, but what's very, very important here is attitude. One of the most important parts of that attitude is giving respect to the rabbis, giving the rabbis cover. What does that mean? Okay, of course we stand up for the rabbi. That's not what he means. What he means is that whatever you find in the Gemara, even a kasha that has a teretz, or even a sheila, you always have to ask yourself, what was the moot point? What was the issue at hand? The Gemara never handles issues that are obvious. It's actually a book of Chidushim. And so, as is the Mishnah, is a book of Chidushim, as we pointed out, and as we will see. So, let's begin with his introduction. He starts off with a very powerful phrase. You always have to know that when a person writes a book, the first phrase is very, very, very important. And his first phrase is a quote from the Gemara Nida, Harotza sheyachachem yarba b'yeshiva. The Gemara says a person who wants to become wise has to yarba b'yeshiva. He has to sit a lot, literally. Rotza lomar. Now he's going to give a perish of what those words mean. Yarba liyashev ala sefer liyayin heitev. He has to sit on the book and look at it very, very carefully. I always say we're observant Jews. and I play a joke on the word observant. Not only that we do what the Torah says, but you have to observe very, very carefully. Why do you have to do that? It's not sufficient when you're learning Gemara to look at the sugya one time, or even two times. כי לא די בפעם אחת ולא בשתיים שיעיין בדברו. כי בכל פעם שיעיין אי אפשר שלא יחדש לו דבר. A tremendous chiddush he just says here. He says every time you go over the Gemara, it is impossible that you won't see another chiddush. I don't think you could say this about any book in the world. But the Gemara has this quality that it can be learned by a young student of 11, 12 years old, and by the Vilna Gaon. How could that possibly be? It has this mystical quality that each time you go over it, you see another depth, and another depth, and another depth, and another depth. Now, in gray, what I did was I wrote, or I put in other girses. There's a wonderful rabbi who, Olav Shalom, went to the next world, called Rabbi Lang, that did a lot of research and went to the British Library and looked at a lot of original texts, and he put them all together in his little book. I don't know if the book is in print anymore. I tried to find the original text and I was successful. It's in the oldest text that we have is in the Jewish National Library, and I got a photostat of it. So that basically is the foundation of the black that I'm using. The variation, the other girses, so I put in gray. Okay, the book was first published, you see, in 1520. That's around 40 to 60 years after the death of Yitzhak Happenton. And I have a handwritten manuscript that I got from the library. So the basic girses in black, and when there was significant girses, other girses I put it in gray. So here it says, and there's another text that says, Ki b'chol pam sheyachzor li'ayin yichadesh lo eizeh davar. Okay, that one's not such a significant one. The next chazal that we have Yitzhak Happenton brings, the Oma Rabbeinu Zal. Eino doma shona pirku mea pamim l'shona pirku mea v'chas. There's absolutely no difference, there's no comparison, excuse me, between learning a parak 100 times and 101. A fantastic statement, but he brought a proof to the fact that every time you're going to learn Gemara, you're going to get another chiddush, another aspect that you didn't notice before. The other girsa says, O Yirtza. O Yirtza means another explanation of the words Yaber Yeshiva. Ki lo yelech b'scharato o b'maso umatno rak Yaber Yeshiva. A person shouldn't run around doing his business and selling things. What should he do? Yaber Yeshiva. In other words, the word Yaber Yeshiva means you should mamayit something else. What should you mamayit? Your worldly activities. Yosher b'dad v'dom, sit quietly, kamosh amru chazal, lo kol hamarba b'schara mechakim. If you want to get wisdom, Chazal tells us, not everybody that goes into business becomes wise. Maybe some people do. Through the give and take, Rabbi Muller used to say, by dealing with all these different customers, you better become wise, or else you won't have your business very long. But not everybody makes it when it comes to wisdom, but everyone will make it when it comes to learning Gemara. So you have to Yaber Yeshiva, you have to mamayit your other worldly activities. V'amru, Harodza shechakem yidrom, v'harodza sheyashir yatzpin. In the in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, in the south we had the menorah, and in the north we had the lechem upanim. So the question in the Gemara is, well, how should you daven? The Gemara says, if you want to get wisdom, so you daven in, of course, facing Beis HaMikdash, but a little toward the south, a little toward the menorah. If you're interested in becoming wealthy, so you should change your direction a little and face the lechem upanim. Mashma, from here, you have to make a decision. It doesn't, the two things usually don't go together. Making your panasa and getting the wisdom of Torah usually don't go together because there's just not enough time to sit quietly and yayin. But that's the alternative Girsa. Okay, just adds that chazal. Now, as I said, the Girsa Kampantori, this Kampantori is going to teach us an attitude. He says, Nokat hai klala biyadcha. Take this principle in your hand. Kol mevukash shetivakesh v'lo hasagas also b'pam rishona sheyishtadel b'meritzus v'charitzus la'ayin pam achapam. He warns us. He says, anything that you want, like here you want wisdom, and you find that you don't get it right away. It just doesn't come from a cursory reading in a flash. So you have to rev yourself up to try with a lot of maritzos, a lot of energy, and charitzos, diligence. You have to go at it again and again. This is what I said, that this book is a book of attitude. It's not only the technical book of the technical workings of analysis, but it's an attitude. It says, look, if you're not making it this, then you have to realize you're going to have to push yourself to understand, because there's something that's difficult here. So you're going to have to push yourself to overcome that difficulty and to analyze it, and not just to say, well, it's difficult, throw up your hands, run away. If it's important and you want it, then you're going to have to exert energy for it. Here's the other text. It says like this: Nokat hai klala biyadcha, kol mevukash shetivakesh v'lo hasagas also b'pam rishona. That's the same thing we have. Anything that you want and you don't get it in the first shot. Sheyesh ikuv b'davar, because there's something stopping you. Lo tisagenu ki im b'torah. You have to know you're not going to get it unless you put a lot of effort into it. Things that don't come by a snap means that you're going to have to rev yourself up and realize you're going to have to work for it. Al kain, therefore, shehishtadel b'zrizis v'charitzos pam echapam. Therefore, since you know that it's a difficult task, you're going to have to try with a lot of energy and diligence, time and time again, to get to that goal. What happens if you see that you're not getting there? You have to try with all the means of your energy to prepare and to work with all your energy. Why? What a beautiful statement. He says trying and energy in anything that's important is mukhrach, hechrachi. It's impossible without it. We live in an instant society. You turn a switch and you get a light. But when it comes to learning, there's nothing that comes instantaneously. And if it is instantaneously, so it's not really the emes. So a person has to be aware that it's going to take energy. And a lot of people don't understand, for instance, why they're not getting it. And it's because of this basic rule. They think that, as Chazon Ish was quoted as saying, they think they're reading a newspaper article or they're reading a nice story. And all of a sudden, they read the Gemara and they don't know the beginning, the middle, and the end. It just doesn't, it's very confusing to them. So his first, no, not his first word of learning, but he says it's a very important principle, that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That's what the Marines say. That you have to realize that you have a difficult task here to get wisdom of the Torah, and it's going to require that you exert a lot of energy to get it. The imkol there. Now, with all this tremendous amount of energy that it takes to get wisdom, tzarich sheyivakesh rachamim sheyasuhu min hashamayim. This statement, very powerful. With all the energy and effort that you're going to put into learning, you have to remember, you have to ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu for rachamim to help you. Why? Why rachamim? Because we don't really deserve the Torah. The Torah is for malachim. The Torah, the people who are pure and tahor. So we have to ask Kodesh Baruch Hu to give us barachamim the understanding of his Torah. This is a very, very deep statement. You have to daven for Torah. We say Rabba before Krishma, and you have to ask Hashem, it doesn't work without it. V'ad yomar, never say kochi va'otzem yadi asali. Never say it's my strength and my power of my hands that's doing this. Never say because it's my great diligence and tircha that's really getting me the solutions here. It's a necessary element. If you don't have it, you're not going to get there. But in the end, you have to daven for it. You have to say, Hashem, please open up my mind and give me the true understanding of your Torah. A lot of people read words, it doesn't mean they have the true understanding. And this is a very, very important pitfall. And this is why I said to you this book is so important, because it talks about attitude. Much more than, they will talk about technical items, but so significant are these few words that people, when they first start yeshiva, really need to learn these basic principles. If they did, they would understand Meirosh, what is necessary to learn. Diligence and tefillah. This is the other gifsa. It continues. Ukamosha Amru Maseches Nida Beperech Basra in Ayin Amud Beis. What does it say there in Maseches Nida? Maya Sa'adam Yechachem. Here's the source. What does a person have to do to become wise? The answer, first line of this book, Yarba Yeshiva, V'yamayit B'schar. He has to increase his learning time, and he has to minimize his work time. Amru, they said, Harbe Yasu V'lo Ilu. A lot of people did this formula. They sat in yeshiva. They suffered by not having an easier panasa. They put a lot of time in, and yet miraculously, not miraculously, ununderstandably, they were not successful. Well, how could it be? A person is in serious nefesh. He's giving up his lomazeh. He's sitting in the base midrash. He's working hard, and he's not. How could it possibly be? Omru, Habe Osavalo Ilu. Here's the key why. Eliavakish Racham. This is what was missing. The person had all the energy and he really wanted and he gave up everything to learn. But he didn't ask Rachamim from who the Chachma, who owns the Chachma. He didn't ask Hashem, give me your Torah. He thought that you work and you get. It doesn't work that way. You have to work, but without asking, Kodesh Baruch Hu, real tefillah, you don't get Torah. You may get mathematics. I'm not saying no. Maybe you get physics. Could be. But Torah you're not going to get. V'zehu she'omo Shlomo Melech alav shalom. Shlomo Melech says it in Mishlei. Maskil haldavi yamatzeh tov. A person who thinks about something will find something good. Uboteach ba'Hashem ashrav. But to get the completeness of the learning, the happiness, the joy the fullness of the learning, then you have to have B'tachon HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rotz Loma, he gives it out. Hamishtadel b'charitzos limso eze mekuvan u'mevuka shto. A person who tries very diligently to find what he's after, he will find something good. But he has to know the second part of the formula. You have to be Teich B'Hashem v'lo b'koach sichlo. Then you'll get ashra. Then you'll get not just a little good, a little understanding. You'll get the happiness and fullness in the learning. Kizeh yasig v'tzano be'ezus Hashem. Because then he'll get to his goal with Hashem's help. And with Hashem's help, all of a sudden the real depth and understanding, joy and beauty of the Torah will come out. And here's back to our girsa. That was another girsa. Here's our girsa. Umishi b'teich b'shem yisparach v'lo b'koach sichlo u'piplo g'vurasav ashrav. The person who trusts in Hashem and not in his own mind and his own ability to reason, to pilpul, and not his own strength of commitment, then he'll get this quality of ashrav. Kizeh yasig v'tzano umevukash be'ezus Hashem. Because then he will get to his desire and what he wants with Hashem's help. And when you get to a place when Hashem helps you, you get the full happiness and joy. I think this little introduction, as I said, and I'll repeat it again, is something that every student who learns Gemara has to be exposed to. The reason why I do this visual logic also, I must take a little moment to explain to you, is that we're dealing here with a Rishon, and his words are very, very carefully weighed. And if you read the book straight through, you get just a fuzzy idea of what it's saying. So when I do this visual logic, I do it purposely to slow us down and to get the benefit of every word. As he said, Yarba Yeshiva, you have to sit on the Sefer. Think about the Sefer. Here's a Klal Gadol B'Iyun. Klal Gadol B'Iyun Shetidaktei Halashon Heitev. The beginning move, technically, now we're into technique. Now we're not in attitude, but we have a very important technical rule. The first thing in Iyun, by the way, Iyun means not just the key is getting a general idea, but really trying to understand what the text means, is Shetidaktei Halashon Heitev. You must be very, very precise with the actual words being used. As a favorite example from the first Mishnah in Nezikin, Arba Abos Nezikin. The word Abos is used. The Mishnah, the Gemara says Abos, Miklal the Ikatolos. There's a deal. The word Abos is not being used in a sloppy, fuzzy manner. It's being used in a precise manner. So since the word Abos is used, there must be todos. So the first thing everyone has to know when they learn Gemara here is you must be a yeki. You must be very, very careful about every single word. Now he's going to not just leave it at that, he's going to spell it out. What are you going to look for? I ask you, what are you going to look for when you're medaktik? So he's going to say, Tishta deliros, im yesh bo yitur lashon o kefal inyan. Is there extra words or a repetition of ideas? Now, I would like to point out these two words. These are two words that are very key in learning this book and many other books. Lashon and inyan. What is the difference between lashon and inyan? So lashon means the vocabulary that's being used. So you have to see, is more words being used here than necessary? Okay. If something could be said in 3 words, so why is the Mishnah using 4 words? That extra word must mean that there's a new concept. So when you read, let's say, when you're reading a Mishnah, you have to see, is there an extra word here or not? Okay, of course, if there's an extra statement. Now the Ramchal brought this up in the end of his Sefer, and maybe we can cross-reference stuff, but let's first get his ideas. What is Kafel Inyan? Kafel Inyan means that even though the words are different, but the content is the same. So make sure that even if you're reading a Mishnah, even if the words have changed, you must have in front of you a new idea at every statement of the Mishnah. You're not going to repeat the same content. If you do find Yeter Lashon or Kafel Inyan, it's a red flag. Stop. New information is being broadcast here. You have to be sensitive and understand what it is. So that's the first rule. Look for extra language, vocabulary, extra physical words, and look if there's a repetition of ideas. Now, the idea could be repetitious within a Mishnah, or you may have learned this idea in another Mishnah, and you'll say, wait a minute, this case in this law was stated in a Mishnah previously, so why does it have to be repeated again? That's called Kafel Inyan. Okay. Second thing you should watch out for, to be medakdek. Ve'im yesh chiddush be'inyan hahu omayma hu olav. Is there some new idea in the content being expressed in front of me, or the statement being said? Again, inyan, lashon, keep your eye on that. Is there a new idea being expressed here in the content or in the language? Now, this second stage is one of the foundations of this whole sefer. He's going to explain to us later that when you deal with Chachamim, they never say things which are obvious. Of course, they never repeat. That's rule number one. But they never will tell you something that you would know. If a Mishnah tells you something that you would know by reading the Chumash, the Gemara immediately says, Zil kore be Ravhu. Wait a minute. Go out and ask the children in the study hall. Which means, whenever the Mishnah or the Gemara discusses a topic, it means that there is an issue that has two sides. And one always has to make sure that he sees those two sides. There has to be some sort of problem here. If there's no problem and it's obvious, then a Chacham, a Tana, or a Amara would not say it. So whenever we read any text, we have to say, wait a minute, what would I have thought? This seems to be obvious information. Now, Bli Neder, again, just like we did in our discussion of Derek Tfunos, we're going to have applications here. We're going to take our Mishnah again. We're going to concentrate on one little Mishnah and really we're going to squeeze out all the great chidushim. We're going to go through these steps, and I'm going to ask you, do you see extra language here? Do you see repetition of ideas? Do you see any chidushim here? Are these things obvious? Okay, that's rule number two. Rule number one is a problem in language or inyan if things are extra. Rule number two says, is there a new idea being spoken about here? Something that we would not have known from reading all of the Torah and all of the Tanakh and all of the Mishnayos that went before. Rule number three, what do you look out for? B'chol shinui lashon v'shinui din o inyan shebei nosei l'nosei lama. See if there's any change in language, any change in law, or change in content from one subject to the next as you're reading down the Mishnah. And if you do see a difference, ask yourself why. Remember the Mishnah in Baba Kama? It said that there's 4 types of avos, and one of them, the last one, was hever. And when it described hever, it said, Lo zeh sheyesh lahem balei chayim, kamo ha'esh she'ein bo. She'ein balei chayim. It's not alive. So it switched the language from hever to eish. So one of the things you have to look at in Mishnah is if the language is consistent. If it's not, it's again a red flag. The other Mishnah, remember, it says pasuk b'chavas b'sayim b'kat. Okay, look for any shinui din. When the Mishnah gives you a set of cases in law, you have to ask yourself, why is case 2, why does it have a different law than case A? Shinui din. O inyan, why does content change from one subject to the next? What is the relationship between the subject we just learned, the case we just learned, and the one following it? Lama, that's the most important word, that 3-letter word. Why? Tell me why. Okay, whenever we see a shinui in language, or in din, or in inyan, we have to ask why. Why is this shinui happening? The shinui is a red flag. It yells out to you, Darshuni. I'm trying to tell you something, but you have to observe and then study. The second rule. Vidarashta, vichakarta, visha'alta hetev. You have to doresh, explain, choker, you have to investigate, and you have to ask very, very well about what you're reading. V'tishtadel lahotzi kol halashon, there's the word lashon again, all the physical words, the inyan shekol mila v'mila, v'kol chelek mineno, yora al davar chadash shelo hayam mulan nikodem. What you have to do is make sure that each word in the text in front of you, in the Mishnah, let's say, and each part of the word is telling you a chiddush that you wouldn't have known before. So it says, for instance, there's 4 types in Zeke. It says hashor. Could have just said shore, why didn't you have extra hashor? Okay? When we go into the Mishnah, we'll start looking at those tikkun. But it's very important that there's not even an extra word, not even an extra letter spoken about it. Everything can be accounted for. It must be there, and not only it must be there, it must be telling me some new information I wouldn't know before. Third rule. V'teda v'taskil hadavrahu. You have to look into it intellectually, and you have to get down to the shoresh and the etzem. What's the shoresh? What's the source of this law? What's the makor of the din? Now, what's the etzem? What's it really saying? That's why, Baruch Hashem, we previously learned Derek Trunos. What does it really mean? Was it subject and was it predicate? Then you have to define it in such a manner that you know mahu anose uma mishpato. What is the subject and what is the law? That's another way of saying what is the subject and what is the predicate. Okay? Usually in Mishnayos, you should know, we talk about cases and laws. So the predication usually are laws. It's something that's either chay or it's pater, halalasa, etc. So what you have to do is, again, this is what the Ramchal also mentioned, you have to make sure that you can clearly state after you studied any statement in the Mishnah, what is it talking about and what law does it have. So this is the Klal Gadol. He's going to go into each one of these steps in more depth. He's going to tell us what to look for when we study Meforshim, and he's going to give us a rather clear definition of how to do the learning process. Whereas the Ramchal told us the basic foundations of the structure, he's going to tell us how to do, in this case, iyun by doing the yukim. If you remember the Ramchal, he said that there's mukhrach the yukim and bilti mukhrach the yukim. And he also warned us that people speak very precisely, Piduach Chachamim. But look what the Rabbi Yisrael Konfenton Zal added. He tells us specific things to look for. Getter Lashon, Kefil Inyan, is there a Chiddush, is there a Shinui? With these tools, we'll be able now to more specifically probe the Mishnah and find out its real message. Be'ezrat Hashem, the next time we meet, I'm going to take our Mishnah in Baba Kama, and I'm going to apply these principles. I'm going to ask you, is there extra words here? Is there a new Chiddush here? Is there extra? And we will open up, Baruch Hashem, Be'ezrat Hashem, a new vista, a new depth and understanding. So we'll stop here.
Okay.